We're back for another episode, part 2 of the ATC70. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff is ready to be restored. But what I've got is I sent off chrome pieces to the chroming plating place I use, and I also found, really lucky, found a thumb throttle with the chrome top. I sent that off too. Also, I sent the cases out. I'm going to have them redone. So it leaves me with this, and the first part to restore has got to be the frame. And so that's our next step. It's going to get this frame out. We're going to clean it up and get it black again. I've noted where all the stickers go in pictures. Tons of pictures. Every time I'm putting it back together, I say, why didn't I take more pictures to see how it goes back together without having to spend a ton of time like this? Where does that go? So part of this is matching the paint on the red. Now, I've gone through all kinds of videos and forums, and I've checked with everybody, and Chico basically narrowed it down to 2 paint colors. One is the original paint color, and I have that code, and I'll show it to you, and the other is a GM paint color. Here are the 2 colors. Now, it's Passion Red, and I believe 74718. That's the Honda, and it's a PPG number that was transferred over from the Honda number, and that gives you the ability to do a base coat, clear coat. Otherwise, if you do the Honda color, it's a single stage, and I like doing base coat, clear coat. So it's much easier. And then the other one I found to be, I guess, I want to say more than one person referred to this color as, a match. And that is the General Motors Super Red. So what I did is I took 2 of these mix cards and I painted each color. And here's a shot of the OEM color code and then the transfer over for PPG, and this is for the Passion Red. And as you can see, you can stop the video, I hope, and zoom in, but I'll zoom in a little. There it is, OEM Passion Red R109. And then here is their mixing ratios. Here's the tank. Now, that's the Passion Red. And this is the GM Super Red. And everyone agrees that this is a better match. Now, it could be for 83. I'm sure they use a little different reds, and they come in, they do different batches. They're not all the same. But this is really, really there. This is it. This is a back piece. It's hard to compare the 2 that way. So we are going to go with the GM Super Red. Now, I polished this out really well before I put this ATC 185 together. And here is the Honda color. I mean, that is totally acceptable also. and there is the GM. And the only reason I think the GM is going to be better is because this has got to have faded a little, gotten a little bit lighter. This is actually more like the fender. I don't know if you can actually see it in the fender or not, but you have to go. Oh, well, yeah, that Honda, I can see, is not as orange. It doesn't have the orange in it. Yeah, that's it. That GM, it's the GM. With the paint and any areas that showed any rust ground off, it's time to put a coat of self-etching primer on. Believe it or not, this is after probably an hour of cleaning and cleaning and cleaning with many different brushes. So I'm happy with what I've got here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get in and I'm going to, with small wire wheels, with bigger wire wheels, and I'm going to buzz all of this down just like I do a gas tank. And I'm going to get it all, as much as I can get. I mean, every nook and cranny is not going to get, completely de-rusted. But it's not necessarily that bad. The frame itself is intact, it's strong, it's not compromised. It's just a little bit heavier than surface rust. And so if I can clean that up, get it to shiny metal, I'm going to actually do a little bit of prep on this like I would a gas tank, and then we'll paint it. I'm using a pretty aggressive, it's like a Scotch Brite, only it's a little more like a paint stripper disc. But this was the smaller one that I use typically, and it just wasn't getting down in there. I like this a lot better. It's gonna really take this stuff. That did a great job on there. It's exactly what I wanted. I got every bit of rust I can get off of there. I went inside here. I even got this bottom pan down in there, which I'm going to do the rust converter anyway, so it's not going to go any further, but this is going to smooth out very nicely. And I don't want to put any water to it. I want to leave it just like it is and get it in primer. It's all cleaned with lacquer thinner, ready for the first coat of primer. So let's get it down there. And there it is with the self-etching primer. This stuff is really good. And you don't have to wait 24 hours or any of that crazy stuff on some of these cans. I believe it's 20 minutes and you can start with your primer or top coat. They are ready to get their first coat of high build. Now we're in guide coat. And it's looking good. You can see the imperfections in there. And hopefully most of them sand out on the first pass. And this is the CT90 frame. Now I only went on these sides here and on the top because that's, just kind of over the top. Didn't really need to do that. It was really smooth for a frame. And then here's the CT90 tank. So like I said, I'm only going to do this video on the 185. It's the same process. So We are now letting it dry overnight, and then we're gonna block sand it. It's out of the paint booth now, the CT90 frame. It's time to do some wet sanding. Now I'm not gonna spend, hordes of time on this frame because it's just a frame, but I'm doing a little bit finer restoration on this as a warm-up for my CT70. Not that it doesn't deserve it. ATC70s are very desirable. And so going the extra mile, we're going to try to get as close to 100-point restoration as possible. We've got the cases sent off. They are going to get redone to a concourse look. So to do that and then not do the frame a little bit more than normal would be, kind of stupid. So it's time, and we're going to use a soft block, 400, and just get, we've got a guide coat on here, and I gotta say that this is gonna sand down to flat with just one coat of primer. I mean, not one coat, I've got like 3 coats on here, but just one stab at it. I'm not gonna take it down and reapply more primer. So let's see how it blocks out. I wanted to show you what you would have seen in this paint without blocking. You'd have seen these small imperfections here. You'd have seen this. And now this is where we got down to metal and there was still paint. The high spot would be this right here. So the light gray is the high spot and the low is probably bare metal. So you need to be careful not to go back down to bare metal and get most of all of this out if we can. As you can see, this all came out beautiful. It's going to be flat, shiny, and straight. And these are factory, and you want these in there. You don't want to sand these out. But up here where I really am not getting totally anal with because I'm next to a weld is a area that you can see it's going to be flat. I don't think any of this is going to transfer through, but you can see like some lines in the grinder mark here, but you feel it and it's flat. And then here's a kind of an example of what guide coat does for you. See, this is a grinder mark, and they went all the way over here. So what you do is you sand until you get to a nice flat total gray, and then you're flat. There's, if this was a tank, I'd have to fill in or recoat another 2 or 3 coats of this high build and sand all these little pits out, all these little pits that you see that are still black, which is the guide coat, meaning that it's really, really low. But that just shows you how really nice this is going to turn out and how helpful the guide coat is. Now it's all sand down, all sanded smooth. I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to rinse it off and get all the dripping and everything from the inside. But this is super flat. I'm really happy with it. And I do want to warn you though that I started on this at 8 o'clock and it's 9:30, an hour and a half of continual sanding with 400. And if it was a tank, it might even take longer because you've got to get everything out on a tank. This is going to be the nicest frame that you'll probably ever see on an ATC70. Motorcycles require a little different sorts of processes than a car. And so this one's hung from the ceiling with care. Look at that box. That's not to code. Look at those. Oh my gosh, somebody better call. Get Chico down here. This smells like Chico. I'm gonna have a word with our parts manager. That is not acceptable, Chico. So, back to the video. It's time to spray it. This is what we're gonna use for the frame, and I've used this for many years. We've kind of compared and did other frames with other stuff, and this always seems to come out as close to factory as I think you're ever going to get. And it's an epoxy, two-step, two-part, so it's very durable. And we're all done with the second coat, and it's looking beautiful. Just let it set up here, and it'll look really good if you happen to pull everything apart and look at it. It's kind of a waste of time in a way, but not really. It looks beautiful. I wanted to do a before and after on the wheels, and the only way I can do that is to give you a before here. This is before, and this is after. I think there's a little difference there. Now, in Shingletown and in the big city, Shingletown, the big city. Now, here's the same wheel after bead blasting, and there's the one already painted. We're going to go ahead and give this some self-etching primer, and then this stuff is pretty amazing. This is what I use. Self-etching primer. Let's let that dry. This is totally before. This is after just cleaning up with soap and water or purple power. And then after it's been bead blasted, primed, and painted. All the wheels are painted. They are silver. Looking really good. All 6 of them. And Rocky Mountain came in, which it's so nice. They, where I live in Reno, Nevada, they're in Utah. And so they get here, the stuff gets here in like a day and a half. But there are the rings for the wheels. And there are the lug nuts, which should tell you that I am now into plating. And so I'm going to be doing quite a few other pieces while I've got everything fired up. While the plating process and everything's going on, you try to do as much of it as you can at one time so that you're just continually running the nuts and bolts and plating stuff through the system. And to learn all about that, you can either go online. This is a Caswell kit, and you can look at all of my other videos. The last 4 or 5 videos, I had this system, and I really went into detail. And as you can see, I have a couple of parts here being plated, and this is part of the rear drive chain tensioner. And here's the other part of it. Now you can see the gold color. This I'm not going to be able to plate, because if I did, I would ruin this bearing, and I'm not going to get involved in that. It spins freely. It's very nice. But you can see the brake cam tends to look a little goldish, where this, the arm, I believe started out silver and is just faded to a little bit of a gold, whereas this is gold. Pretty much figure that's gold plated. They have the Caswell. I have the gold or yellow chromate, so it'll match that. And so we'll move on to cleaning up this front hub, the sprockets, and probably bring the frame up from the paint booth and start to assemble. Before and after. Yeah, that plating really makes a huge difference in the outcome of a restoration. So what we have now done is brought the frame up from the basement, and as you can see, the body work made a huge difference. It's looking really good. And we're going to be starting to put things back together, which is always exciting. Getting a sense of accomplishment when you start putting things back together. So we're going to put a few things on the frame, then we're going to put together the wheels and the tires and then the axle and so forth. Pack the bearings. Now with the bearings packed, it's on to the wheels and tires so that I can put together the front end. But it's never dull getting happy mail. It's always exciting. So we have they make a tiny, Caswell makes a tiny kit. It's like 45 bucks. Maybe it's even less than that, but anyhow, these days it's probably more than that. So it's a 2-part tank sealer. So I think I got 3 of those. Yeah, I got 3 of those and 1 regular gas tank motorcycle kit. And I also got the seat, and it is better than I expected. What I really was after was just the foam, and this foam in the pictures, it looked like it was still sharp, still squared off, still looking good. You never know what the pan's going to be like, but this pan shows no rust. And I mean, if I just clean it a little, I'm not even going to have to paint this pan. I mean, this thing is perfect. I'm not seeing any, around these holes they're always rusted out. They're always showing rust, and you got to sand it and repaint it. I'm happy. So as soon as the seat cover comes in, we can work on that. But for now, we're going to have to get onto the wheels and tires. With all the paint dry and set up overnight, it's time to put the tires and wheels together. So the first thing is new valve stems. I already put it in, and I should have made it part of the video because I went online and there's, everybody's got all these wacky things, how you're trying to do it with the tire on the rim, and it's it's not an ATC rim, it's not a split rim, so it kind of doesn't apply. I'll tell you what I did. I took the rubber cap off. Now imagine this stem is out here, and I replaced it with this metal stem. And the reason I did that is because by spinning the metal stem on, I was able to push it up through the hole where this was peeking out, about 3/4 of it. And then I was able to grab the head of that valve stem and use the rim as a pry bar, and it pulled it right through. It just pulled them in so beautifully. I just wanted to pass that along. You have to determine what the outer half of the rim is. This has no holes for valve stem, so that's the inside. And the valve stem would mean the outside. So the outside goes down, and you want to have some water, and you want to wet the rim and wet the rubber on the tire. Your beautiful Caswell zinc and blue chromate plated nuts and bolts, all OEM, ready to go. Lay the rim down, or the tire down on the bottom half of that. Install your new rubber ring, and there's a little groove in here that it rides in. And wet down the rim and the bead on that one. And I'm probably gonna have to reposition the camera so you can see what's going on. And as you can see, you line up the square hole with the square hole, pretty obvious. And you're gonna take one of these bolts and you're gonna come up from the underside and then squeeze down, grab a washer, grab a nut, and this is the hardest part of it all. Those nuts on there. So we'll do that on these two. As you can see, the nut does not want, it's at an angle, so this isn't totally lined up. So if you take your vessel, they call it a Japanese commercial standard, anyhow, it's the perfect size. You put it in this round hole, and you can move it around till it's just lined up perfect. Put another washer, another nut, and you just kind of work it around until you get this two center holes to be nearly, as perfect as possible. Now that all three of them are on, I'm going to do one last little bit of alignment. And get this near perfect. Then I'll snug these down, and if I need to align it again, I'll align it. You want these holes perfect. Check for alignment here. Yeah, like that. Take down a little bit more. And we're crushing that center O-ring in there as we're doing this. And then we'll torque it to about, I think it says 14 to 17 pounds. I just put 15 pounds on it. And then the trick is to blowing it up. Now I like to do a little at a time, especially with that O-ring in there. Probably not needed. And that's snug. That's snug. There's snug, and then we're done. So they say to air it up to about 11 pounds. sure that's probably close there. Yeah, that's only like 2 or 3 pounds. Give it a little more. They also had a measurement that you could measure the 60 inches and you'd air it up until it achieves 60 inches outside diameter, which I thought was kind of interesting. Oh yeah, we're at like 13. So, lead off down here. And I'm going to set these at 5. Okay, 5. And there she is. Brand new. Oh, beautiful. Last thing is to put the little rubber cap on. They say to use just regular water. I'm using the distilled water that I use in the plating. And the reason I'm sure they don't want you putting that soapy water on is it just looks like hell. When I'm done with these, I just wipe them down and they're brand new. I mean, sometimes you can wash that stuff off and it still shows after it dries. Pack the bearings. As you can see, they're really clean. I cleaned them all up prior to painting this. Now I know this was anodized, but I went ahead and just painted it. Mainly because these bearings are so good. They're like new. And I'd probably ruin them taking them out. I've got the plating. I could have plated it, but it's going to show really well just like it is because this is the color of the plating anyway. So just start pushing in the grease. And it slowly goes away, and you can tell it's getting it in there and to the other side. And they've got the seals. And there's the front hub in. Seals ready to go. We've got to get the front fork on there so we can mount the front wheel, and then we'll mount the rear axle, and then we'll have a roller as we're waiting for the cases for them to be cleaned. And so this all should sand out with 320. All the scratches will come out and it'll look beautiful. So let's get going. So it's all sanded, all the little pits, much as you can do. I got basically every one I could see. So now we're going to throw some self-etching primer on it and then load it up with some high build primer. Here it is with the self-etching primer. Now it's time for the high build. That's the high build primer. And there's the number. And that worked really well. And here is the high build. It's all smooth. I feel like I could paint it right now, but it's not good enough. Not good enough for the channel. So I'm going to put on the guide coat. And now this is an SEM. These are expensive. Same with the self-etching primer. But you don't have to spend that kind of money if you don't want to. It just comes with features, like the self-etching primer you can recoat in 20 minutes, where some of the cheaper stuff they say overnight, and it's thinner, and you kind of get what you pay for. But I use plenty of cheap spray can primer and all sorts of stuff for different uses, and even on this you could do it. So we're going to guide. So this is running long. The video is running long. So this is a very good time to give this video an end, and then we'll pick it up on the next segment. So what we've done is we've gotten a lot of it in primer, and we've got the engine cases sent out to get cleaned, and we're pretty much ordered everything we need to finish the project. All the decals came in, and Chico has got a couple things left to order, but that's about it. So we will see you on the next segment, where we will put this thing into a brilliant red, add the decals, and probably build the motor, all in the next segment. So until then, we'll see you later.